Good evening, viewers. Welcome to the Face Off. Peter Kivazo, it's Friday night, and yes, finally we have the news. The smoke is out, and it is black. They couldn't get a pop. And yes, on the table I have Charles Romshana. Richard Baguma is at the UN in New York, and he's itching and dying to join the show. If Richard, you're on the stream, yes, you can contribute on the stream wherever you're at. Welcome, Charles.
The Almighty God is great.
I know you're a very happy man.
Why?
I know why. And I have Ibrahim Semujunganda. Welcome, Ibrahim.
Thank you.
Right, viewers, definitely, it would be a lie if we said we would talk anything else. We will talk the TDA. We should be joined by Honorable Medad Lubega Segona. Whenever he can join us, he said he would. So if he comes along the way, he wouldn't have jumped into the show. He would have been expected.
If you tell Baguma Richard that you are doing some streaming, he may go to look for a stream. You need to clarify.
No, Baguma understands technology. Baguma understands technology, and I'm sure he is live. Baguma, you can do my Facebook. We are able to communicate. Viewers, straight away, I will ask my production team to give me the clips from the TDA today. I'll start there. I'll have one by Chairman Waswa Birigwa. I'll have one by Bishop Zach Nirinjie, Dr. Chiza Besije, and John Patrick Amama.
Why don't you begin with Amama?
But you
the
don't.
Order doesn't matter.
You don't determine the order. Don't be
And
a bad
Chaza,
guest.
I am boss.
And there is science.
All right. If I can have Ambassador Waswa Birigwa.
Start with the Romshana.
The Romshana.
You got another one. The propaganda is not working.
Okay, I can have them in the order that you have.
It's just guy. That one has
We can have Romshana. After all, he.
Okay. I will have them.
Bishop Zach Nirinjie, the move should not lead to any public notions that TDA has failed to reach a consensus, but only agree to different paths.
So our members of the alliance have presidential candidates. And as an alliance, we have to manage that process.
As various parties within the alliance addressed the media today, the mood was evident that the protocol had no room for more than one candidate.
The alliance did not arrive at a consensus on a joint presidential candidate. That is to say, as you know, that members of the alliance endorsed different candidates.
Chairperson Ambassador Waswa Birigwa, flanked by Forum for Democratic Change bigwigs and the flag bearer, retired Colonel Dr. Kiza Besije, retaliated their commitment to struggle to achieve unity, re-emphasizing the need for reforms.
The FDC remains committed to and will work and cooperate with all democracy-seeking forces to ensure regime change.
Besije said they had made it clear for the great benefit to the TDA and the unity of the country. However, Mbabazi later conceded that there was no way he would start campaigning without a team. FDC insisted that they wanted legitimate commitment to values in the struggle, democracy, the rule of law, and human rights.
If the single candidate was, for example, the Honorable Mama Mbabazi, that a number of the traditional opposition supporters may choose not to vote. They say, if the competition now is between Honorable Mama Mbabazi and Mr. Museveni, which looks like a movement primary, we don't see why we should vote. You know, some of the opposition supporters would take that view. The same would happen if the single candidate was, for example, Besije. those who would be coming from the movement would say, this opposition man.
This notion, Babas alluded, are well built within his endorsement for the transition.
I have said my stance, our stance as Go Forward, represents the true values of our struggle for democracy, for unity, for prosperity of this country.
Minutes after John Patrick Amama Mbabazi had arrived at the TDA, clad in a complete suit, there was no reflection of era attachment, but a flank of a team of lawyers. Go Forward team.
Thank you very much. I shall have as well Mbabazi nominated as the TDA candidate as well. Can I have those pictures when my friend Norbert Mao nominates Amama Mbabazi as the official TDA candidate?
As endorsed by 7 out of the 9 parties.
Others believe that if all parties to TDA protocol were faithful and acting reasonably, we would all be stating the obvious, that Honorable Amama Mbabazi is the preferred TDA presidential candidate.
Norbert Mao would not hide it that the summit was short of simply announcing the preferred joint candidate for the coalition.
A clear decision based on an overwhelming majority was evident, namely that Honorable John Patrick Amama Mbabazi is the preferred presidential candidate of TDA.
Mbabazi insists on giving Ugandans alternative policy proposals with primarily focus on the future as the focal point of the struggle.
With true unity, meticulous organization, and a focus that is razor sharp, we will win this election and fulfill our solemn duty to transform this country for good.
Thank you very much, team. Charles Romshana. Give me your gut.
Because you see, we have had a conversation before we came here.
And it wasn't on air. And it was a private conversation.
Well, you see,
so give us your heart.
You see, these things of Uganda, we should not have private business. That's why there is this total confusion you are seeing here, which you are trying to highlight. If you consider the statement of Mao, Honorable Mao, if we were faithful and acting honestly, because he's a witness. He's a witness. He's been a part and parcel of that grouping. If we are faithful and acting honestly, Amama would be. But then you have another statement from Chiza Besigye. And it says, those who will see Amama Mbabazi will say it's a primary election between Museveni and Amama. It's still NRM. It's NRM, it's movement. That's basically a statement. Of course, he gives another qualification to it. And you now have a withdrawal of FDC. But FDC was on this protocol, was on this arrangement. Now, let's have assumptions. Let's operate on assumptions. That Chiza Besigye had been endorsed as a flag bearer. Where would we be? TDA would be having a candidate if Chiza Besigye had been endorsed as a flag bearer for this TDA thing. Chiza Besigye would be the candidate. So, and who was the chairperson of TDA? Virugwa. But
no,
the one who was chairing the sessions.
No, Virugwa was is
Professor Sempewa.
It's Professor Sempewa.
Yeah, but the one who was chairing this summit or something.
No.
Virugwa, I saw Virugwa chair this thing.
He was chairing an FDC meeting.
Of TDA.
Chairing an FDC meeting
Why was he beaten?
at TDA.
Why was he beaten? Are you aware he was beaten by FDC boys
But
at the party headquarters?
even
Are you aware?
Even you were beaten by Jim West.
Now, then you have become petty. And I thought you a member of parliament. I could be mistaken. Birgwa was beaten. The information I have is that they're even going to put those who beat him to disciplinary committee. And I pray that they do that. Chiza Besigye was withdrawn by Odonga Oto and Jack Savitt. Today Oraro Tunu went in and removed. Is when he remembered that UPC has been having a flag there.
No, it isn't Olaro Tunu.
The Oraro Tunu group.
It is Jimmy Akena.
Sorry. Thank you. Jimmy Akena went and withdrew the flag of UPC. It's now that he remembers UPC flag has been flying high around that Naguru facility. So why did FDC join this grouping? We discussed the other day here, and I told you my submission was that there is no, I've not known of any law that backed TDA. It's not a registered organization. It's not a political party, and therefore can't sponsor. For information, today, I think hardly 2 days after their disagreement, they had the 100 signatures from the required districts that they now have presented before the Electoral Commission. In other words, by the time they were having these conversations, they were already collecting signatures for the nomination of their...
Of course you expected that, didn't you?
I'm trying to show you the face...
No. Just let me explain that. And
what are you explaining?
Let me debunk it. Because
Why should you?
Hold, Charles. Let me debunk that. Because a lot of people have said that particular individuals or parties having signatures was actually a breach of the protocol. Far from that.
Have I said it's a breach?
Each individual candidate in the protocol was to be sponsored by their political organization.
Have I said it's a breach?
And therefore, naturally, they were expected to have collected those signatures as evidence that they were ready to run for president.
I haven't said it was a breach of the protocol.
Carry on.
No, I haven't said so. In any case, this protocol has no serious basis at all. Of course, I know for a fact that it's only a political party and an individual that can sponsor themselves. I actually also know that Kizza Besigye can withdraw himself as a candidate, and FDC would have another one. For FDC to cease being a candidate, it must be a decision of the FDC delegates conference. It cannot be an individual's decision. That can only be after the Electoral Commission's nominations. If it's closed, then FDC is no more. Any other party that withdraws would be no more. So you would have to have a complicated process, but based on good faith. And I'm telling you, the way these organizations came, some of them didn't have good faith, and that's why they've crumbled the way they've crumbled. That you come in and it must be your way. It must be about self. But the other problem that they have yet within them is a contradiction. Because the leadership of FDC, including Kizza Besigye, actually by the way, even FDC is divided on that. Because Kizza Besigye was asking Mugisha Muntu during their campaigns whether Mugisha Muntu was committed to TDA. And Mugisha Muntu was calling for a review. Why? Because Kizza Besigye has two legs. One, that elections shouldn't take place if there are no reforms. And indeed, reforms are not there. So if they are not there, then elections shouldn't take place. Or you should use the platform of TDA to stress, to campaign for reforms. So you have even changed the other resolution. That now that elections are not taking place, we participate as we campaign for reforms, which they've not done. So in essence, TDA would only generate a candidate if the candidate was going to be FDC. It couldn't generate a candidate outside FDC, and that was the same case. It also applied with IPC. That's why even IPC collapsed. That is why they couldn't take off with Elia Kategaya, because still Besigye insisted on Elia Kategaya being his AD in his office, which couldn't happen. So, and
therefore Kategaya went back to Museveni to be the president.
Yeah, I mean, of course, it happens. How sure are you that eventually Besigye will not go somewhere else? This cannot be a group to liberate the country. These are about themselves, and indeed they dominate political space. They operate NRA style. They can never get anything out of negotiations, like the way it was with the Nairobi Accord, peace accord with Rutwa, the way it has been in South Sudan. We are waiting to see it. Probably that one could yield some fruit with some good pressure. But where the NRAs are, they will never get any product out of negotiations. So you wouldn't expect meetings dominated by the NRAs to generate anything out of negotiations.
Thank you. Semuju, listening to Charles, the FDC was the stumbling block, and I've seen a lot of that coming through the social media. the FDC was the stumbling block to the TDA. Without the FDC, the other parties, except CP, have chosen to go with Amama Mbabazi after the collapse of TDA. Now, I have been told, and I need observations, that the FDC and CP opted out. They opted out. DP and UPC, depending on which UPC you're dealing with, whether Rotun or Akena. I don't have my friend David Pukol here. He would quickly justify which of them. The UPC, DP, Betty Kamia's, what's the party called? Federal Alliance, and PPP, that's 4. And Go Forward itself, that's 5, opted for Amama Mbabazi. Allegedly, and mark my word is allegedly, Bukenya opted to sit out after the process had turned messy. I don't know who else. And Jema, allegedly. Therefore, you have 2 sit-outs. You have 2 that move with the FDC candidate. You have the others that say JPAM. Why did the FDC go into the alliance when they never believed in the spirit of you can win it, you can lose it?
I think let me first make one point clear that our attempt and our effort to build an electoral alliance failed. I think it was now Thursday morning. So we don't have joint candidates. I mean, we don't have a joint candidate or joint candidates as TDA. So, in fact, for me, my own understanding of that position is that TDA as an electoral alliance almost is non-existing now. There was supposed to have been the Democratic Forum under which you would push for electoral reforms. That was not activated, but it remains part of the documents. You see, part of the reason those who are in TDA said we will arrive at a joint candidate through consensus was because of many considerations. Because the FDC will keep asking. There are parties that are part of TDA that in the last elections didn't even get 1%. Even when we've been making contributions for rent, for furniture, for everything, you see that's the only area where now people said you're a bigger party, you should contribute more. And we did in good faith. But
and
I am one of those.
It is not good manners to remind people.
Yes, I am one of those who in the FDC meeting said you cannot be arrogant when you are with colleagues discussing an electoral. So don't remind them that they are smaller parties. They will feel very bad. But that remains a fact. So we decided that we will not go into who is big, and therefore we will never arrive at a decision by voting. And that was deliberate. For the Honorable Mao to turn around and then he says majority and obvious, people are dishonest, it's very painful. And you don't want to begin exchanging. You then now remove the focus from the target and begin targeting yourself. You see, Peter, I joined politics 2010. That's when I went into active politics and elective politics. What has happened today is what happened that time. Immediately I left the Observer, I was appointed the IPC spokesperson. We sat on the tables and spent every single minute. And I think part of the reason TDA collapsed has that history. You see, in Uganda, the FDC now is second to NRM. There are so many parties that want to be second to NRM in the hope. You see, trouble in this country, there are even parties that are happy to be the majority opposition. So when you go to parliament, especially at our level as members of parliament, you can be appointed the leader of opposition, you can appoint the chairperson of a committee. So there are parties, and it's legitimate because I saw that in 2000, and I think 2000, when we went to witness elections in UK. The first party to go on the street to celebrate was the Liberal Democrats. Their calculation were to get 37 MPs, they got 54. They were on the street. Blair had won elections, but they were on the street because
They had
their
achieved their
projection,
second.
yes, their projection was 37 MPs, but they got, so we still have parties within Uganda that would be happy to be what FDC is. And they have been uncomfortable with FDC. I mean, you followed these stories in the parliament. We also want to take part in the FDC government and so on and so forth. So these were undeclared interests as these talks started. But behind the scene, meetings at Fairway, meetings at all over the places, were to facilitate and champion those interests. So we went in fact, the first time I set foot at TDA, I asked all the political parties, including mine, because what the Kenyans have done, they follow their law. They register an electoral platform following the laws of elections in Kenya, and all of you will become one thing. But you can't go to build an alliance when you want to remain FDC, you want to remain DP. People are very sentimental about their parties, and that will delay the change that all of us are aspiring for. Because the FDC thinks we can't part with a key, the DP can't part with a hoe, Olarotono thinks he can't part with UPC, and then you claim, I asked them that you guys, you can't have your cake and eat it. You want to promote FDC, you want to promote UPC, you want to promote DP, yet you want to work together to remove a government. I asked simple questions. You are not registered as an electoral alliance because the Political Parties and Organizations Act recognizes parties working together or parties merging. And then there is a solution to each. I said, why don't you go and register TDA as a political organization? You go and store these other parties and then you go in alone. Because even if TDA had arrived at a joint presidential candidate, that presidential candidate would be a candidate of his party, not a candidate of TDA. So TDA will remain just an umbrella, just in the heads. And that's why people said, no, we can't. So and that presents a very big problem, because that's why you've seen Amama Mbabazi saying, for us in go forward. Mao declares him as a TDA candidate. Him at the same press conference, he says, for us who are go forward. And for me, that is a fundamental problem. I actually think parties in Uganda, opposition political parties, will do themselves better if in the next election, or if in the subsequent, if they can't win, register one political organization. First of all, you do away with the sentiments. Debunk with the old ones. Yes, you do away with the sentiments of FDC. Now our party, we are big, we are small, we are what? And then you will not have 20 parties, because it's not the number. This country has registered 43 political parties, but some of them just register and disappear. So even the parties, for you to sit on the same table and say I've been endorsed by UFA, by Bidandi Sali's party, of course they add, it's just a symbolic value that they add to you. Because where are structures of Bidandi? Where are structures of... I
have been told the PPP is one of the largely very structured organizations.
Where are they? Where are they? They are in theory. They are not there. No, they are there. Because you see, I'll tell you, Romshana, I go through these things every day. We've just finished youth elections.
But you haven't left at Chams' group, which can hold a delegates conference.
Yes, yes, that's why, because Chams, at least he has an MP. It will tell you and Jem, but the others have nothing beyond, because Mzee Bidandi Sali stood and then he left for reasons that are understood by everybody. So where is the part? At least he was the face of the... So, but the point, that is beside the point. For me, that's the problem I saw when I went to work in the media team at the TDA, that political parties wanted to form an electoral alliance, but they also wanted to remain independent of each other, promote the interest and
you see, Mr. Chibazo, and that is the larger point I'm seeing, that when they were in the TDA in the initial days, it was all hope. They were seeing it. Actually, by the Amam Babas had gained the momentum. I don't know why he even went for that grouping. From Mbale, in Soroti, in Teso, in Jinja, he had gained the momentum. All headlines were about him. They pulled him into TDA. And that time the conflict was between Amam Babazi and the police. Vowe, you are not going to go there. What those who are very serious expected was to see whether he was going to confront police and put it down. If he had put police down, now it would be a different story. Either it would be no more, or Uganda would be on a different footing. They were nowhere in the headlines. TDA comes after he's joined it, and by the time Amam Babas joined the TDA, he hadn't been thrown out of the NRM. He hadn't left. You know that's the time when Hope Boyce was with them. The NRM for change or something. That kind of grouping. If you go and check in the media, it is them who are saying, but you are delaying to announce. There is a record. There is a record. The messages and others saying you are delaying to announce. Them actually even indicating they are in the talks with the Mama Babas. So they were in talks to do what? When do you realize that you can't lose your color, others are too small? Because must it always be about FDC? And I don't have any problem by the FDC going it alone. I don't have any problem. That's how it's supposed to be under the law. But why do you always call for groupings that you can't allow to mature if they don't endorse you? That was the case with IPC. By the way, even the initial IPC of the Semogere supported the message. That moved. But as long as it's not going to support somebody else, it won't move. This TDA thing, we had a conversation and we appear to be having a consensus on some of the brains behind it, more especially in the civil society. The mindset was about Mugisha, because initially Chiza Besigye had indicated he wouldn't participate in a sham election. And they said it. At the time when they were setting Mugisha Muntu and Amam Baba's chances were high that the two could accommodate each other, they could have a deal. Until Besigye came in and upset it. But by the time Besigye came in to upset it, he put Mugisha Muntu on the spot. Mugisha Muntu, are you for TDA? And I would love the same Chiza Besigye now to ask Mugisha Muntu.
Yeah, but
Mugisha Muntu, are you for TDA?
Let me take a break. Viewers, I'm taking a break. And when I return from the break, we'll interrogate a few of these things. One, what was the faith in going to the TDA? Semiju raises an interesting one. He says, and I have had interactions with him on this one, that he believes that parties to be able to successfully have delivered an alliance, they needed to debunk who they are. Kenyans did it. They left KANU that not only had property bigger than Uganda House, had a history of having had power for a generation. They said, we are leaving KANU, we are leaving DP, we are leaving Ford, we are going to a Rainbow Coalition, we are going to, there was the other Mbogebo one, they are going to NAC, and now they have the one that delivered Uhuru. It's been coalition, and when they registered the coalition, they debunked the old political parties. Shouldn't Uganda have Ugandans in the opposition have swallowed the pride of who they are if they are different and recreated themselves into a singular legal entity and say, here, we are presenting as Party X or Alliance X registered, and we are not using the political parties that we were at? Was that the solution? Don't go away.